Well, happy Wednesday, Blake.
Right. Must mean it's time for our Ian Computers Wednesday webinar series yet again. This time we're going to be discussing questions you need to ask your IT vendor. Or if you don't have an IT vendor, you can also ask these questions of yourself or whoever happens to be handling your IT. These are going to be questions about strategy, about process, about tools to help you kind of get an understanding of where you are at in your IT environment. So I'll go ahead and introduce us here on the next slide. Of course, I'm with.
There we go.
There we go. Our CEO and President, Ian MacRae. He's been doing IT for literally his entire life and now brings that expertise to you. More than 23 years of it since founding Ian Computers in 1997. And of course, myself, Blake. I'm now, after spending over 10 years in the enterprise IT world, I'm now doing marketing and communications for Ian Computers. So we're excited to present this webinar to you today.
I should say I was 18 when I started the company. So, well, thank you, Blake, for that introduction. And you got started pretty young in IT as well, didn't you?
I did, yeah. Yeah, some guy named Ian MacRae hired me when I was about 16 to work in his computer shop, and I've been doing it ever since. So,
well, very nice. Well, these are things that we're all going to be familiar with, as well as some of our audience today. So I guess it's all about getting better outcomes for your company, for your business, for your employees, for your customers. And there's a world of questions that we can ask of our partners, of our IT professionals that are on our staff, and of our managers and employees. So the world of questions is the big pyramid there, but the pyramid really has two sides. So one would be questions that you can ask of your IT support professionals. The others would be questions that we could ask of ourselves, because just like any department in the business, the IT department needs support. Hard to get things done if management isn't bought in and supporting the IT team. Have you ever been in a situation where an initiative doesn't go anywhere because there isn't management buy-in?
oh yeah, for sure. In the corporate world, it's got to go. In the enterprise world, I should say, it's got to go all the way up the chain. So even a small decision that isn't supported by everybody who's involved can go off the rails pretty quickly.
Yeah, so I think and it's also for the best. So we also want to have questions about what repetitive tasks are out there, what can we do to drive automation, all of those types of things. So, you know, there's a lot of soul searching that we can do as business leaders of ourselves. So we're going to show you some questions that kind of go on both sides of this fence today. We're going to start out though with, you know, what are some questions that we can be asking of our IT professionals that go dig into these 4 levels of technology management. So, you know, I think the first level is really the partnership level. Do we have the right people or the right organizations involved? Obviously, if you have an employee or a vendor that really isn't aligning with your company culture, you know, isn't motivated to do the job, you know, isn't fully engaged, it's pretty difficult to get any of the other things like IT strategy or your systems or settings lined up. Have you ever been a part of a team, Blake, and you've seen the difference between people that are highly engaged and people that are just sort of there punching the clock?
Yeah, for sure. And I think we get into this a little bit later, but also kind of a, you know, when all you have is a hammer kind of problem, where if, you know, the infrastructure people say everything's an infrastructure problem, and software people, everything's a software problem, you know, which you need all those people, but you need them working on the right things too, in order to have success, I think.
That's absolutely right. So I think it's about understanding, what role we're talking to. I think that's your hammer analogy there. If you're talking to a software person or a software vendor, their motivations and their solutions are going to be coming from their area of expertise. So I think that's something that really has to be understood by the business decision maker. I think also today we have a lot of potential partners out there in the marketplace, but sometimes the motivators behind those partners is confusing. I think the classic example is kind of is the business model of our IT vendor compatible with our needs? Linux, Microsoft, Google, Apple, these companies have very different business models. All of them are offering very similar technologies, but for one organization, Linux might be a perfect fit. The software is free. You're going to be paying for support. Maybe you're trying to embed the software into a custom piece of hardware or something like that. That might be a perfect fit. But for another entity, maybe a defense contractor, using a open source system might be the last thing that they would want to have. They'd want to have something closed source. And so I think really understanding the business model behind the vendor is really critical, because a lot of times you'll find companies that are doing all things for all people, but the bottom line for that business is in projects, or the bottom line of that business is in software or hosting, and they're not really that interested in the other aspects. It's more of a convenience add-on, and that can really affect the outcomes that you get later on down the road.
Yeah, I was thinking of that as a car analogy, as I like to do. There's lots of skilled mechanics out there, of course, but if you are looking for a place to work on your Chevy, you're not going to go to European Import Auto Specialists Incorporated, where they have all BMWs and Mercedes and Audis parked outside.
Right.
If you pull up to that in your Chevy, you're going to get a form of help, but they may not have the expertise that is really going to help you solve your problem. It's the same in IT. Like you said, Linux versus Microsoft. There's applications for both, but if you don't have and they're very similar, they can be similar, but when you're looking at your specific needs, you need to find a specialist that can help you where you need help.
Yeah, great example. So I start with the partnership because the next level is the strategy. So often I see the strategy may be solid, but the partnership isn't. So I think the strategy is more about what business goals are we looking to accomplish. Do we need to achieve regulatory compliance? Do we want to automate our sales process? What are the goals that we're looking to accomplish in the business that may need multiple systems really to support those goals? So I think we need to really start asking some questions around what strategy we want to implement, and what our bigger picture goals are. And this is something where we really need some buy-in for leadership. So here are some example questions here. Obviously, you and I today, we're working remotely from home. Many companies are working remotely more today than in the past. So that's a strategy that we're looking to implement more of. Mm-hmm. We see more IT regulation coming out. That's something that we're looking to meet those strategies. And we often need multiple systems to meet these strategies. So, we can't just think that buying one platform, or, okay, we're going to go with the G Suite or Office 365 or this, new ERP platform or whatever, and it's just going to solve all of our problems, because it usually doesn't work out that way.
Right. Yeah, it's none of these things are one size fits all solutions.
Right.
You have to implement them so that they are aligned with your business goals.
So once we understand the strategy, so if our strategy is going to be NIST compliant, it's going to take lots of different systems to make that change. We're going to need a SIEM platform, monitoring the network. We're going to need two-factor authentication. We're going to need to have Active Directory in place and get that configured correctly. So the next stage of the pyramid are systems-based questions. Do we have outdated systems is probably the most common question that we have in this place, but we get into how are we doing our patching, and what processes do we have around the help desk. A big one is that we might have the system in place, but we might not have the IT processes around training employees, or really getting things pushed out to the level that they need to be. So we quickly go from systems into, okay, well, we've bought the two-factor authentication, or we have the new system, but do we actually have the settings uniformly set up so that the system is doing what it's supposed to be doing? Oftentimes that's the missing link, where people have made substantial investments, but they only have the system turned on 10% of the accounts, and then they still get hacked, or their employees are still struggling to share documents or other things. So getting the settings in place is the last set of questions here. So I think this can become very granular. So obviously these more settings questions, you're going to have to be a lot more technical to understand these. So this becomes very specific.
Yeah, if I've seen many times where you buy a system thinking it's going to solve all your problems, but that's only the first step in a 100-step process to actually get it to do that, because you have to there's customizations, there's security, there's all those things that go into actually making the system work for you. And so that's where a lot of this breaks down too, I feel like.
That's right. So if you're not technical, sometimes it's about asking your IT partners, what are the capabilities of our systems, but why aren't they driving? Why aren't we getting those features? Is it wrong settings? Have we not trained correctly? So having some sort of InterLevel question is something that I think can be very powerful. So let's just use this framework to troubleshoot a real life issue that we experienced here at Ian Computers. We had a new client come to us, and they were a healthcare organization, and they were really frustrated with their health records system being very slow, having poor call quality. We've all had those phone calls that are garbled, and you can't hear the other party. And they were having just consistent printing issues. The patient's there at checkout, and they're waiting for their receipt to print, but it's not coming. And they understood that this was probably network related, and they had a partnership with two main vendors, a national company that was a software company that was hosting their key electronic health record system, and then a local break-fix IT shop that was providing a few monthly reoccurring services, but mostly just working hourly when things went wrong. So that's kind of how they were set up from a partnership standpoint. So they didn't have any internal IT staff. So I was providing some coaching to their accounting person on how to troubleshoot this. So here are some of the questions that we started asking. So, I mean, the first level is, who's responsible for making this work? And, we quickly realized that essentially nobody was responsible. They had these two companies, but both were kind of pointing the finger, saying,
Mhm.
Our data center is working fine. The local network is working fine. But obviously it wasn't fine because it wasn't working. So I guess in an enterprise space, who in the enterprise is really responsible for architecting a solution?
Right. It's going to be there's someone going to be the CIO, the CTO, or someone that, was designated by them. There's going to be somebody who has the vision.
Right. So unfortunately, that was missing here. They really didn't have that someone that was, the software vendor was really focused on doing a great job with delivering their software, but they weren't really looking at how the network was set up. The network vendor really didn't understand how to interface with this offsite data center. That wasn't their responsibility to sell the data center. This was the only client that they had that was connecting to that data center. They weren't an expert in it. So really nobody was responsible for the architecture of this system. So, I mean, that was an early understanding that we had here. Also, the business model. The software company, they had been, providing the software for years. They were very expert in the software, but essentially they were very new to this cloud hosting environment. And to them, it made their jobs a little bit easier because they didn't have to remote into the client to install their patches. But here, their lack of expertise at running a data center, was really impacting the client's operations.
Mhm.
So the next thing we really saw is that this organization was working mostly in the office. They were geographically, all coming out of one building, but here this data center wasn't in the building. So they had an in-office server. They didn't enjoy managing that in-office server, but they weren't having problems around reliability when they had an in-office server. They were worried about their compliance. And they just thought, well, it would be simpler if we just outsourced the server to the software company. But here it ended up, slowing down 40 or so employees every day because, the server was hundreds of miles away.
Mhm.
So I guess the last question here is, if we're having a network issue, who are the experts with networks? Well, it ended up, the answer to that was really nobody. I mean, the local company, they were more expert with replacing computers than dealing with network issues. And the software company was more expert with running a data center or writing their software even than dealing with the type of network issues that the client was having. So there really were sort of two roles missing from this team
Mhm.
that would be needed to resolve things. So pretty quickly, just talking about this from a business standpoint, without a lot of technical understanding of the problem, you start seeing that this partnership is probably not the best partnership. Maybe you keep the software, but you use a little bit different strategy with how you run it. You need to build a different team here.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
So the next level here is the strategy itself. So part of this strategy was the outsource to the cloud. So I think when you look at that partnership, I guess, have you ever seen like a perfectly good partnership go wrong because the strategy was wrong, or a perfectly good strategy go because the partnership was wrong? Blake, I mean, I see a lot of great technology in the dumpster because one of these things is off in the
Yeah.
stack.
I mean, in my last position, we did a lot of things in house, but you did run into situations where, the genius who came up with the solution, which was a perfectly good solution left or stopped maintaining it, or went to a different role or something, and it just kind of went by the wayside. So that's yeah, that would be a good strategy, and no partnership causing something to fail.
Yeah. So I thought the next level of questions that we started working on is, is this strategy going to be cost effective, the outsource strategy? And there were really two levels to this outsource. One was the outsourcing of the infrastructure, moving the servers to the cloud. And the other was the outsourcing of the support for the end users and the servers, because this company didn't have an IT person. So we wanted to crunch the numbers really on both of those things and see, if it was right for the company. So then, we got into looking at the systems and the settings. And even if you're not super technical, oftentimes you can find out what platform you're on and just Google, what are the common problems with the platform. And, this client was accessing the data center through remote desktop protocol. Like, I know you've worked in supporting applications through a data center, a lot of remote desktop type applications. What's one of the most common problems with those things?
Why can't I print?
Yeah. So they didn't. They were having that common problem. There are a set of solutions around that. Moving the printers to the network, establishing VPNs or some sort of a private network back to the data center, and they didn't have those settings really in place to get this set up correctly. Now, Blake, how do you resolve garbled VoIP traffic? What are some ways that you get that taken care of?
More bandwidth.
Yeah.
And QoS.
There you go. Yeah. So the more bandwidth gets into that cost equation. So we had to look at this, and we saw that it was much more cost effective to buy the right equipment that enabled the QoS, even though that required some new networking gear, which was a one-time capital expense. That prevented them from having to spend a lot of money every month on their internet.
Sure.
So I think what may have started out where the business people thought going to the cloud would eliminate all the needs to buy in-house infrastructure, they didn't realize how many little boxes and gadgets they had in the closet that still had to be maintained and have a budget for that. Quite frankly, they didn't have anyone architecting it at that level. They were just architecting it at the one software that was their key software level, not really at the network level. So lastly, the InterLevel questions, we talked about those earlier. Is our partner structured to provide an effective strategy? I mean, I think some of these can really, sum up where the gaps are. And what had to happen here was, getting this ERP system, back on a server that where it could run reliably, closer to the office was just a more cost-effective strategy for this particular organization. So how do we arrive at these things without the client having to master the art of the pyramid and asking these questions themselves? Really, that's something that we're here to help with. If we're working with you to architect your network and come up with an IT plan. So let us show you how we would ask these questions of our clients and ask the questions of ourselves to make sure we're headed in the right direction. So I guess, Blake, you've been in IT for a long time, and sometimes you have that great idea, but maybe the right person isn't in the room with you to really see it all the way through to execution. You know, is it important for IT to have some regular buy-in from senior leadership?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the only way to get anything done long term is to make, like we said, the right people need to be bought into it for something to survive the idea stage.
What so often happens, and I'm sure you've seen this, is as the IT people get the senior leader in the room, and then what do we do?
I mean, blow his mind with all the lights and bells and whistles that we're gonna be building for him.
Right.
Shock and awe method, I think we called it.
Yeah. So we talk to them about things that they may not understand or care about, that are too down in the weeds. So in this diagram, we really want to work to get the right people in the room at the right time, talk to them about things that are their area of expertise. And sometimes we're working with small organizations where one person is maybe sitting in 2 of these seats. But other times we do have this type of definition where we're able to work across 4 different roles, and we get the right people on our team in the room to have the right conversations as well. And with this, it's about not trying to take on too much all at once. So we suggest a plan where we have goals for each of the quarters of the year, and when we're at the Q4 IT strategy meetings, that's when we're bringing the CEO in to get the buy-in for the next year. But to your point, Blake, with the blowing the mind, that we're getting the more tactical meetings, taken care of at other points in the year. So what we want to do is have a roadmap that we understand what we'll be talking about every month, who needs to be in the room for those conversations, and what we have to do to set ourselves up for success. How many hours is it going to take throughout the year for both parties to really work through the roadmap. That's really what we're shooting for here, to not overwhelm either party, and to not fatigue either party with talking about the same stuff month after month.
Sure.
I don't know, have you ever had an IT vendor where they want to have a regular meeting, but they're just always reviewing the same stats?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, what do those mean though?
Yeah. So here's the checklist that we have for each quarter. This is our IT infrastructure checklist. We're looking into making sure that we have the right infrastructure, the equipment's not too old, it's covered under warranty, that we have the nuts and bolts of a disaster recovery plan in place, that we have all of the fundamentals of the service agreement and those types of things in place. Q2, this might go from Q1, we could be talking to even an IT person. Q2, we might need to start getting some buy-in from middle management. We're talking about cybersecurity. What are the HR policies? How are we training our staff? How much are users prepared to put in complex passwords, or to put an app on their phone to make sure that the phone is secure and encrypted. So we do need to have some management buy-in, but maybe we don't need the CEO in this. A lot of this stuff isn't going to really rise to the level of totally floating their boat. We probably need to really talk about those things later. But this still is pretty important stuff, and some CEOs are very engaged with cybersecurity, but a lot aren't. But we do need to be able to put together budgets and those types of things around this. Now we start getting a little more strategic about cloud. So in Q3, we're now talking more about business transformation. How are we driving automation? with the cloud? How are we enabling people to work from home? So a lot of times we're talking about how to do things that we're already doing, just in a new fashion. But we do want to understand this piece along with the cybersecurity, so that when we go into that Q4 IT strategy meeting, that we have the right SWOT analysis, that we can sort of show the business's overall picture. And we can roll this strategy out different ways for different clients. Sometimes we start with the IT strategy in Q1, and we move forward from there depending on their needs. But I think the point here is that we don't want to do everything all at once. That we need to spread this out across the team and have every team member work to their strength.
Yep.
So we do have coaching for our account managers and team to provide leadership to clients in the following areas. So we want to be able to ask probing questions of how our clients' businesses are doing. I was just talking with a client today, and a lot of clients are being impacted one way or another with COVID. And it's changing the competitive landscape. We were talking about how the sales process has changed for them. So these are some questions that we give our account managers to consider using in their client meetings, so that we're better understanding what's going on, and is this the right time for that new security initiative, or do we need to delay that for a quarter because of budget or a lot of other things going on? We want to really understand those things so that we're all on the same page. So we ask questions about the client's business. How do they view their business compared to their competitors?
Yeah.
I'm sure, like, you've seen some businesses really differentiate themselves through the use of technology so that the clients get a really different experience. Can you think of any businesses that you've worked with that use technology as a differentiator?
Yeah, I know one client I had in marketing was trying to move to a to a touchless buying experience. They did electronics recycling, so they set up a storefront where you could click and order a container to put your electronics in, and they would securely destroy them for you. So that was a big thing that they were trying to get going just in the last year to differentiate themselves.
That sounds a lot easier than having to call during business hours, and maybe you get a voicemail, and you have to write down what the price quote is and show it to your boss, and maybe the boss has a question, and then you've got to go back to the website. I mean, it sounds like that would allow the employee to really sit there at their computer maybe at 5:30 in the evening and order it. If the boss has a question, they could show them all about what's going on.
Yeah.
So we want to understand what growth people are looking to achieve. We had one client where they differentiated themselves using technology. They had a high touch brand that you called in and you got an account manager and you were able to work with a person. But then they had a low touch brand where you could get the same products and services, but it was more, you had to fill out the paperwork yourself. You weren't going to get a person to talk to. You got a better price, but you had to sort of manage the experience yourself. So this is stuff that we want to understand so that we can set systems up correctly. This is your area, Blake. What types of things do you want to understand with marketing strategy?
Yeah, I mean, these are all great questions. I mean, there's as many marketing strategies as there are companies, but I mean, they really break down into inbound and outbound. You want people to find you, or you're going to find the people.
That's right. So we're not a marketing company, but we understand that sometimes people are paying, hundreds of dollars, maybe more, for a lead. And if the email system isn't set up correctly, if a salesperson can walk out the door with a book of business, this can be really impactful to our clients. So we want to protect them, help them be efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So, the phone systems, the way the phone systems are set up, all of these things, impact the business goals. So we're asking questions about, how the sales process works. Are they using a CRM system? Those types of things to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And then lastly, this is obviously where we often are brought in because there's some sort of operational efficiency problem, like in the example with the unreliable cloud system. But really, we should be having all of those conversations about the other areas so that we can drive efficiency, across the entire business and really understand what's going on versus, just understanding, where things maybe are slow or sluggish today. One thing that we do like asking and is, what is unique to your company and industry? We often find that people think that there's a lot of things that are very unique. And we listen to that, and we do find that there often are some things that are unique about their industry and company. We also bring to the table a perspective of working with 40 other businesses that are doing, doing their network. So we can share some things that we've seen work in other businesses, and kind of pollinate some good ideas. That's one of the things I enjoy the most about the job. Today, we have a lot of folks that are experiencing management challenges with remote workforce. So we're talking about, how people are collaborating, how they're sharing files. Do you know that people are showing up to work when they say they're supposed to be? Those types of things. Are the phone systems working correctly for people? All of that is top of mind today.
Yeah.
Well, Blake, wow, that's been a lot of questions. So if somebody doesn't have a question that they can pull from, I don't think that's possible.
Lots and lots of questions. But honestly, that's the business we're in, right? And we're asking questions. We're asking the right questions. Like we were talking about, all those questions that go into learning everything we need to know about our client's business is so that we can help them, right? We don't want to hand out cookie cutter solutions to things, right? It's about understanding where they're coming from, where they're going, and where they want to be. And so all of those different questions, either your IT vendor needs to be helping you ask them, or you need to be asking them, so that you can make sure that your process, your strategy, your team, your vendors are all headed in the right direction, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, thank you for asking all of those questions for us, Ian.
Well, and I guess if there's, you've put together quite a lot of great content, Blake, and it's out there on our website under the Learning Center, as well as our YouTube channel here.
Yep.
And what's our next Wednesday webinar going to be?
So it is on the 17th of February at 3 p.m. And we're going to be collaborating with Shenandoah Valley Office Equipment and Kyocera Document Solutions on managing documents while working from home. It's a question I think that's come up a number of times with our clients, and it sounds like with SVOE's customers as well. And so we're excited to present some new and exciting developments in the world of scanning and faxing and printing.
I'm now surrounded by scanners at home. So speaking of driving automation, so this is how you can schedule a meeting with me. Thanks for setting that up, Blake. And here's a phone number that goes directly to me at home, or when I'm on the road or in the office. So and here's how to get in touch. Well, thank you, Blake, for putting this all together today. And we will see people next Wednesday, the 17th of February at 3 p.m.
That's right. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, make sure to check out the rest of our videos. We have quite a number of very interesting webinars about many of the things we've discussed, about developing your IT strategy, about outsourcing your IT, about insourcing your IT, how much it costs. Check those out if you're here on our channel also.
All right.
That's it.